You want to say something? Are you sure you want to say something?
Sir, I'm sorry, I have to speak before you come down. Please say something about the two-thirds gender rule. It is silent.
Embu Governor Cecily Mbarire made one of the most pointed intervention at the joint UDA-ODM parliamentary meeting on Tuesday, March 10, 2026, stopping President William Ruto mid-address to demand a clear public statement on the fate of the two-third gender rule, a constitutional obligation that has eluded Kenya's parliament for over 15 years. Mbarire did not wait for Ruto to finish his address. Before she spoke, she stepped in while the president was still at the podium and directed him to specifically and clearly address the two-third gender rule, stating plainly that the report presented by Agnes Zani-led Oversight Committee contained no guidance whatsoever on the matter. She identified the silence on the gender rule as a significant gap, one she argued could not be left ambiguous given how central the issue is to women across the country. Ruto initially responded by insisting the gender rule was indeed captured in the report, pointing to it as the first item under the constitutional amendment. He called for the document to be read aloud so the meeting could confirm its inclusion. This initial exchange did not satisfy Mbarire, who pressed further. She reminded the president that a public pronouncement on the issue carries enormous weight for Kenyan women and asked for a direct, unambiguous statement right there in the meeting room. Ruto then gave a more detailed response on how the government intended to move the matter forward. He explained that the proposed broad-based mediation committee, one of the key structural recommendations to emerge from the meeting, was partly designed to build a consensus on the constitutional amendment, including the two-third gender rule. He declared that the parliamentary group assembled at the meeting fully supported the two-third gender rule without reservation, committing the combined UDA-ODM bloc to its implementation. The two-third gender rule is enshrined in Article 27 and 81 of the Constitution of Kenya 2010, which requires that no more than two-thirds of the members in any elective or appointive public body shall be of the same gender. Despite being a constitutional mandate, Parliament has repeatedly failed to pass enabling legislation since the Constitution came into force. President Ruto had personally promised during the 2022 election campaign to deliver the two-third gender rule within 90 days of taking office, a commitment that went unmet. The Constitution of Kenya Amendment Bill 2025, which seeks to implement the rule, was further and still awaiting full parliamentary consideration as of March 2026. 3 legislative proposals tied directly to the gender rule were among the bills referenced in the original NARCO report, a constitutional amendment bill to add nomination provision to Article 97 and 98 covering both the National Assembly and the Senate, an election amendment bill requiring political parties to submit gender compliance candidate lists to the IEBC. A political parties amendment bill proposing the creation of Women Inclusion and Political Participation Fund to support training and capacity building for women in politics. As of March 10th meeting, 2 bills closely connected to the gender rule reform remain under mediation between the Senate and the National Assembly. The Oversight Committee's broad report, released at the same meeting, was the product of months of stakeholder consultation involving public forums and written submission from across the country. The 5-member committee, chaired by former nominated Senator Agnes Sani and including Fatuma Ibrahim, Kelvin Kiarie, Gabriel Odunga, and Javan Bigambo, with the executive directors of UDA and ODM serving as joint secretaries, was appointed in August 2025 to track the implementation of the 10-point agenda signed between President Ruto and the late Raila Odinga in March 2025. The committee's report noted that the implementation of the 10-point agenda had been progressively, though it lacked or it acknowledged that a number of legislative and institutional commitments require further action. Among its 11 overall recommendations, the formation of a broad-based mediation committee between the Senate and the National Assembly stood out as the primary mechanism to unlock outstanding bills. The report also recommended new legislation to strengthen the protection of protesters and guarantee respect for the Article 37 of the Constitution, which protects the right to peaceful assembly. In addition, call for the National Police Service to receive more resource and continuous training to improve crowd management. On the broader implementation progress, the report confirmed that 3 bills originally recommended in the NATCO process had already been enacted: the IEBC Amendment Act, the Statutory Instrumental Amendment Act, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission Amendment Act. The reconstitution of the IEBC under the new legislation was completed when the new commissioners were sworn in on July 11, 2025, enabling the resumption of by-election of voter registration and boundary delimitation process. Moody's upgraded Kenya to B3 on January 7, 2026, a development the committee cited as an evidence of the microeconomic stabilization under the broad-based government agenda. The committees also documented a process of accountability and anti-corruption measures. The Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission filed 143 recovery cases worth 22.9 billion. This disrupted scheme valued at 27.4 billion, recovered 9.8 billion, and secured 86 convictions during the review process. The implementation of e-procurement system and the operationalization of 23,000 e-citizen service was cited as an additional measure to reduce opportunities for corruption within the public sector.